Welcome to another insightful episode of The Communicative Leader. I'm your host, Dr. Leah O, and today we are delighted to welcome Chris Davenport to the show. Chris is a seasoned entrepreneur and a distinguished figure in the technology industry, renowned for his strategic vision and transformative leadership. Chris has dedicated his career to building industry-leading technology companies that empower both employees and clients to reach their fullest potential. With roots in entrepreneurship dating back to his college days, Chris has developed a reputation as a problem solver extraordinaire. It has earned him titles like the Wolf and the Cleaner. His extraordinary journey includes remarkable growth and eventual sale of 3i International, a comprehensive technology solutions provider, where he, listen to this, my friends, where he led the company to a staggering 1,000% revenue increase. I mean, just try and wrap your mind around that. In today's episode, we'll delve into Chris's unique approach to leveraging technology, coaching, and strategic management for sustainable business success. He'll share his expertise on the key elements that drive growth, the role of emotional intelligence in leadership, and how structure and accountability can really help reduce stress in business operations. Whether you are an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned business leader, Chris's insights will offer valuable guidance for navigating the complexities of today's business landscape. So if you are eager to learn how to enhance your leadership abilities and achieve that lasting success, this episode is brimming with practical advice and inspiration. What else? You're going to have to ignore my voice in this episode because I was just getting over pneumonia when Chris and I had the pleasure of chatting. All right, let's dive in and have some fun. Hello, and welcome to The Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Million-Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On The Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. So Chris, welcome to The Communicative Leader. We're so excited to have you on the show. And to kick things off, I was hoping you could share with our listeners a little bit of your entrepreneurial journey. So how you transitioned from founding your first company in college to becoming a prominent business expert in the technology sector.
Hi, Leah. It's great to be here with you today. That's such an interesting question. It brings back a ton of memories and emotions. I would have to say it started out while I was in college, like you said, and it was really at the boon of .com, and the internet was taking off, late 90s, and I was going in to be a pre-med major. Big change, right? I
Yeah.
totally changed course. And so I had a kind of inflection point moment where I got a laptop for graduation for my parents, and I just fell in love with technology, and that really got my interest peaked in that area, and I started working just odd jobs for businesses that didn't know what to do when they would get viruses or need computers set up. And I just started that way by word of mouth. So while I felt like at times I was missing out with my college friends, they were out partying, I traded the temporary rewards for long-term gain.
Yeah.
And so I was, between school and work, I was doing about 80 hours a week. And I got so obsessed with it. And it became very fun solving problems and helping others through whatever they were facing, that was causing them pain in their business. And I did that for many years, continued college, but after college, I continued to do this, and still through word of mouth, just got a large amount of businesses that I would work for. Even started working for competitors in the space that did what I did, but needed expertise that they did not have. And so it just turned into a company. It became more than I could do on my own. And along the way, I started learning from these individuals that I was working for, these CEOs, these business owners, these executives, that I would watch them as I was working run their business and do their planning and talk about their numbers. And I just learned, I listened to every second of that. And that's really what turned me into an entrepreneur.
Yeah. There's so much from that story. I love that you leaned into the shift when you realized this is where my passion is. Because my day job, I'm a professor, so I see so many are like, well, I'm just going to finish, and maybe I'll like it at some point. It's like, probably not.
Probably not.
It's not. It's not piquing your interest now.
Yeah.
And then too, when you said that even your competitors were seeking you out, that's when you know you're doing something like beyond right? When they're like, oh gosh, I've got to swallow my pride, but I need your help. I need your expertise. So that's a really, really great story. And thank you for sharing that journey with us.
Sure.
And I think that sets us up nicely for your problem solving expertise. And I know that you've been referred to as the wolf and the cleaner because you have this adaptability to resolve complex business issues. So, how did you develop this reputation, Chris? And what are some core principles that guide your approach to problem solving?
But I love this question because problem solving and helping people is really my passion. That's what I love to do. And I actually, talking about working for competitors, I got those nicknames from some of my competitors, and they turned into being great friends along the way. So, so I would get called in, and there was a IT company in San Antonio, Texas, where I grew up. So I'd take work there as well. And there was a gentleman, his name was Nicholas. He's from Sweden, so he's got an accent, and he's a funny guy. So he's the one that coined the name, the wolf or the cleaner. He had a team. He was a few years ahead of me in building out his company. I still was a one-man show at this point. And they called me in to get them out of a jam. They had a server that was down, 100 employees couldn't work, and it had been that way for a few days. And if you know anything about statistics, if a typical company, if they're down for 7 days, their chance of bankruptcy is very high. And so it was dire. And so I got in there, and I probably worked about 30 minutes to an hour and had them back up. And did that repeated results like that for them. And so he gave me that nickname. And he'd asked me the same question you did. What do you do? And I try and share my knowledge, and it's really not even the knowledge. I go into this stuff sometimes never touching the technology before. And so it's not necessarily about knowing the systems. And I think that's a hang up that a lot of people have. And this is some advice that don't let that scare you. If you've never seen it, every problem has the same makeup or the same architecture. And so what I do is I start by dissecting it down to the most basic parts that you can, and I think a lot of times people are glazed over by what they're seeing, but what they're seeing is just a symptom or a set of symptoms from the real problem. It's much like your car. Oh, it doesn't start. Well, it's not the car that you see that's not starting. It's something inside, the starter or the battery or something else is causing that. So that's the first thing I do. And then the next thing I do is when I come into these problems, even today with leadership teams and whether it's tech or not, people are so focused on the emotion that they're feeling at that moment in time. And that's what's driving them. Their fear of something is what's driving them versus seeing what the problem is to solve it. They're afraid in the moment, and their fear is they're overcome with that fear, and that's preventing them from seeing what the problem is, because that's what we're humans. We act on fear sometimes, and so the second thing I do, in addition to simplifying it as much as possible, the second thing I do is to take the emotion out of it. And so typically I have an advantage, and this is what I used to tell these people. Hey, I have an advantage. Fresh set of eyes. I just walked in here. I have no stakes in the game here, you know? And so when they would feel bad when I'd solve it in 30 minutes, I'm like, hey, you've been at this for days, you know, and you're probably tired. You're probably worried you're going to lose your job or get fired, or, you know, whatever the worst thing, the catastrophe is in their head. That's what they're worried about. So dissect it down to the most basic elements. Even if you think you already have done that, go deeper, and then tell the emotion to pause while you're using your brain cycles to solve the problem.
Yes, that is so helpful. I was even thinking that's like the principles I'm using to help a fourth grader learn some more advanced math than they have done in the past. What do we know? Let's strip this down.
I have a fourth grader, and I can relate to that too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But you're right, especially in organizations when our livelihood is tied to this and our reputation and all of those motions, we can see how we can let them easily take the driver's seat if we're not telling them, nope,
that's true.
You're not needed here. You're not helping right now.
That's right. That's right.
So let's look at your transformation or your transformative leadership approach. So we know with you at the helm, 3i International experienced a significant revenue boost. So I was hoping you could discuss some of these key strategies that you implemented to drive this massive growth. And what are some other lessons that other entrepreneurs could take away from your experience?
What we really did at 3i is we built an incredible team, but it didn't really start out that way. I think you can grow a company to a certain point on your own drive and your own sweat equity. But at some point it gets too big to where you cannot hold on to every element of everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. So I think when I started out, some growing areas for me, some growth that happened when we started 3i, I had a handle on every customer, every problem, and I would catch the guys and girls if they fell. You know, if something happened, I would be there to help them, boost them back up. And I didn't always have to help them. They were great, you know, very smart, capable people, but sometimes they would get stuck. And that ended up not working as we scaled. We scaled, you know, beyond that, and we started to see problems because I wasn't letting go properly. So one thing I did was I started to document how we did things and how the 3i way was done, and then started letting go and giving these things to people to own themselves. Yeah. And did it fix everything? No. But we went further and implemented something called EOS, which stands for, excuse me real quick, sorry. So we went further and implemented something called EOS that stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. Oh. And that's what I do today. So I'm an implementer now. I fell in love with it so much that I started doing it for others to help them because it was so transformative for 3i. And what it did was it took the focus off of the company being me and me being the company. The company started having its own structure, its own set of rules, its own vision on where it was going and how it was going to get there. And once people saw, oh, this isn't Chris, this is 3i International. Yeah. Then we started hiring additional people as we grew.
Yeah.
And instead of here's the Chris way, it was here's the 3I way.
Yeah.
And within that, we had accountability and structure and really just communicated on a regular basis with our people. The management all had the same answer, whether or not there was dissension in the planning room. We left, and it was the way. And that's what we really used to transform the company there.
Yeah, and what a recipe for success. These like guiding principles where we're all, like you said, even if there's dissension when we're discussing it, we're a united front, and then empowering people.
Yes.
You hire smart people for a reason. So then we can give them those guiding principles and let them shine.
And Leah, there's so much fun in seeing someone, even seeing some of the people that came through 3I and grew. And there's one guy, his name's Jay. He ended up starting his own recruiting company, and he's killing it. And it's just awesome to see. If you let go and you let people do what they need to do, magic can happen, not only for the company, but for themselves.
Yeah, what a gift.
Yeah.
Right, because a lot of times when we think about work, we are not thinking about it as a gift, right?
Yes.
A lot of employees. So that really is incredible. So my follow-up question to that, and you kind of already hinted at some of these challenges, but I know that when you have this impressive scale up of 3I International, what were some of the most challenging aspects of the growth process? And then how did you look at those obstacles and turn them into opportunities?
That's another question that spawns a bunch of different feelings.
Yeah.
And I think, if there weren't problems, we wouldn't seek solutions, right? So we would never have found EOS. We wouldn't have let go. These people wouldn't have been made more, through that. So some of this stuff is going to sound horrible that we went through, but it was good in the end. And one thing, as we were implementing EOS, we were wondering for a while why, we were making money, we were bringing money in, but we just didn't know where it was going. And, I feel like, I had a partner, and him and I, we were looking at the bank accounts, we were watching, and through that process, it uncovered something. We found out our CFO was embezzling money from us.
Oh.
And, a large sum of money. And had we not gone through pain and implemented a system, we would have never found out, potentially. Maybe another way. God works in strange ways. So maybe he would have brought us something. But it within 6 months of starting the process, we found that out.
Okay.
And that was one thing that was very challenging, and it was a growth challenge because we were growing. Outside looking in, you should have had checks and balances. You should have had this, but we grew so rapidly, we didn't really know what we didn't have that we needed yet. So the cart before the horse kind of. I would say another thing was it was just difficult sometimes to find the right people. And I think in startup culture, you hire people when you start, you hire people that are evangelical about you as a person. And so I found those people, and I was in turn evangelical about them. And at some point it gets too big to do that with everyone. And then you start to find people and you think they're the right people, but they don't fit the core values. They don't mesh well with the rest of the team because they're not there for the same reasons those initial people were there for. And so finding the right people is tough. And how we worked through that was using EOS, you implement, you define your core values and your core purpose, and you communicate that with the people. And you use that when you're attracting talent. And you also use it to repel talent that may not fit, that may have a better home somewhere.
Yeah.
And so while we were going through that, we outsourced certain things until we could we augmented it with outsourcing until we could figure out how to build it internally with the right people. And that really was the kind of the final straw to break us through to rapid growth there.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love, you started off by saying without these problems, we wouldn't have found these solutions, right? And so it's a nice way, no one is like, what obstacle do I get to face today?
Yes.
But being able
Yes.
to look and say, we could get creative here, and we're going to have to get creative here. So I think that's a really great way of looking at it. And two, I appreciate how instead of kind of shove that square peg into the round hole, like how do we outsource these roles, these needs until we have the right fit?
That's right.
Because you could do so much damage to a culture when we're forcing people who don't want to be there and aren't great fits to be there.
Yes.
It's just not worth it.
It's not. And we went through pain with that. We had one individual, he would show up to the office drunk after lunch and killed the culture for a while. And we eradicated that and found someone that fit. And it was night and day.
Yeah. So you've talked a lot about EOS, and now you're helping others. And so I know that you have a great track record of successfully coaching CEOs, other business leaders. And what do you think are the most crucial elements of an effective coaching or mentoring relationship?
I think that every relationship, especially in coaching and mentoring, every relationship, even outside of that, really, you have to start with honesty and openness. Because if you're holding back something, or if you're trying to be something or someone you're not, and I'm not talking about aspiring to be someone, that's okay, but just having a facade that's not real, it slows down the process, or it just makes the process just not even start. So you have to be open and honest with each other. And so a lot of people don't really, a lot of people say, oh, well, great, you're a coach, and they kind of laugh about that, thinking, well, how do you do that? And I tell them, well, 25 years of building businesses and, working with thousands of people. You can't just go take a class, get a certificate. It doesn't, you can get the knowledge, but the expertise comes from living it and figuring out, seeing in someone if they're not being open or not being honest. And sometimes they're not doing it to lie. They're having problems being honest with themselves. And so a good coaching relationship is a coach that will tell you, just as mine does. I have a coach as well. If I'm not being honest with myself, or if I'm not being open, just calling it out and not being afraid of doing that. And we call it entering the danger, just getting it out there and say, hey, Leah, I'm noticing that you're quiet today. Is everything okay? It could just be giving you space to say something when maybe you're in the room and you feel like you don't have the space to be open or honest, giving you that doorway to go through. And being a good facilitator. So pausing everyone else. So if let's say John's over here to my right, he's, trying to talk over you. And hey, John, hold on a second. Leah's trying to say something. And so doing those things is crucial to having a good coaching relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that actually, I'm going to skip ahead to a question about emotional intelligence because
Yeah.
you're already right in there.
Okay.
So you know that it is central to your mentoring style, obviously. So why do you think, in all of your experience, Chris, so how do you see emotional intelligence as being vital for business leaders? And how do you see it transforming leadership? So people are actually really effective and conveying what they want and not just kind of the old command and control style.
This was one of my favorite questions so far. I think that this is something that's overlooked, because I think in our society we want to think we have it all figured out, like everyone else does online,
Yeah.
but we don't, and that's
Yep.
okay. And then the second thing is that's okay that we don't.
Yeah.
And so, with regards to emotional intelligence, like I said in the problem solving, most of us are led by our emotions. And so it makes it tough to manage because emotional responses elicit emotional responses.
Yeah.
And so then you end up with these scenarios where people are at each other emotionally.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just they forget the problem that's going on.
Yes. Yep.
And so, and this happens in the session room sometimes too. And it happened in my past businesses where people would, get upset with each other. And I think it's crucial, when you boil down every company, you're not managing a product line, you're not managing a service, you're managing people.
Yeah.
And when you're managing people, you have to have, as a leader, have to do some internal work on yourself to have that emotional intelligence, to not react to the emotion.
Yeah.
And then also give people grace. Like I said before, none of us have it figured out.
Yeah.
We're all on different scales in different places, and we have to meet each other where, as a leader, you have to meet the people where they are at that moment in time. And I've done a lot of work on, I've probably had a coach / therapist for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I see her every other week. And sometimes there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
But that helps me with my blind side issues with emotional intelligence issues.
Yeah.
And I hate to even call them issues because it's just,
Yeah. Just being a
things that,
person.
it's part of our
Yeah.
makeup.
Yep.
And so I think it can transform our effectiveness as leaders, because if people see us, and even if it's the individual that's coming at us with emotion, and we are steadfast at maintaining our emotion and respond to them, with, kindness, not necessarily niceness, but being kind to them and not snapping back at them, but providing them a solution. Maybe that solution is, hey, let's take a 10-minute break and then come back to this. Or it could be, hey, I think I'm sensing that you're upset right now. Do you want to, go deeper? Just give him the door to go through.
Yeah.
And then that typically helps a ton when you approach people like that.
Yeah. 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 You're right. And it makes me think a lot of times people are like, what is the one communication tip? I'm like, tone, not what you say, but how you say it. And it
That's
made
true.
me think of your emotional responses, elicit emotional responses. It's like,
Yes.
same message, but if we can remove that emotion, a lot of people are going to be all ears to it. Might
That's
not
right.
like it, but they're not going to push back so much. But when you come with a emotion, that tone high, it's usually met with an
It,
equal or
it's going
larger
to,
response.
yes, that's right. Equal or larger for sure.
Yes. Yes. So my next question, and I think this is a really important one with everything that's going on these days in organizations. But the core of it, I'm looking to see how you bring in accountability and structure to help reduce, in a way, stress and enhance productivity. So when we integrate accountability and structure in organizations, how have you seen this in turn with time help to streamline operations and to really make the workplace one that we are producing more, but also we're feeling better about it because of the structure and accountability? What does that look like?
What we did and what I helped my teams do as well. So what we did the same thing at 3i, and we didn't do this from the start, but we did this as we learned. And because in the beginning we used to manage by, hey, you got this, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And the people were evangelical about us as the leaders. They did it, but that doesn't work scaling. So we implemented a structure, a business structure, to where each team had a defined leader or manager that led the team and managed them and held them accountable. And you know how I think in the old days of business, a lot of business owners were, and I think there's still business owners that are afraid to share numbers. And they did a survey actually on this that showed that the employees always think you're making more than you're actually making. So just share the numbers.
Yeah.
And something that drives accountability is just being open about the numbers, and numbers from a standpoint of what the person, the team member is supposed to be doing in order to make the company see success, in their role. And being good about being clear with those numbers and what they mean and how they can attain them and how they can get there. All of us need different varying amounts of data. I don't need a lot to get start, but some of my team members have needed a lot. So you have to show them, you have to paint them a picture of what it looks like, what does success look like? And then on a weekly basis, reviewing these numbers in a meeting to show them, hey, you're on track. Awesome. Hey, I see you're off track. Let's talk about that. What happened? Do you need support? Making sure you're giving them, as the leader, you're giving them the capacity, time, the necessary tools, whether it be technology or instruction or training, to be successful. And then lastly, sometimes the people are just not a fit for the seat. Yeah. So not putting someone in a seat that's really not, like say you put someone in a sales role and they don't like to talk to people. That's never going to work. And you're stressing them out. They're not going to produce. It's slowing the company down. And so that's really what reduces stress, is making sure you have the right person in the right seat. Then you're holding them accountable, not, with a stick, but more with a carrot, so to speak. And then when they're off, communicating. Don't let it fester to the point to where everybody's upset and, they have no idea what's happened. They're shocked that their numbers are off because you didn't talk to them for 3 months. So I would recommend that.
I really like that idea that you're right. I think employees just tend to think organizations are just raking in so much money. And when we're transparent about that too, I think there's an element of empowerment where an employee can see how they are needed and what they're doing is helping that bottom line. And there might be ways they can help increase it.
Yes.
So
definitely.
that's really powerful.
They love that. They love all of us, not just they. We all love having a purpose and feeling needed and important.
Yeah.
And that's really what accountability can be, an ugly word to some people, but it's really about having your place and making a difference in whatever you're doing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you say, I'm like, I love accountability.
I do
Like they're
too.
just like a blanket comfort word for me.
Yes. Yes.
So
I'm the same way. I need something to do
yes.
to
Yep.
help.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, Chris, let's think about sustainable success. And you know that you're mentoring these business leaders. And how do you set them up so you're not only helping them achieve growth now, but how do you sustain it long term? And have you found, are there key ingredients for maintaining that momentum, especially when business environments are so dynamic?
I think sustainable success, in my experience, comes from something. It's going to sound simple, but I'll get deeper into it. It really comes down to your meeting cadence as an organization. And what I mean by that, it's similar to if you decide you're going to get healthy and you go get groceries and you get all the health food, and then you do it for a day or two, and then you stop doing it. So you planned once, and then you expected it to have a result forever. And sometimes business owners and leaders do the same thing. They say, okay, we've got it. It's good. Now let's just keep going.
Uh-huh.
But things change. People change. The marketplace changes. So what I find that creates a sustainable success is, yes, continuing to do what you're doing and holding people accountable and communicating, but leaving the business behind every 90 days to go have a meeting together with the leadership team to work on the business instead of in the business. And the viewpoint is so different from, it's much like when you're in an airplane, you're looking down.
Yes.
And I always think it's cool when you fly over your own neighborhood and you're like, hey, that's my house,
Yeah.
and it's just a cool feeling because it's
Yep.
something you don't see very often. I think
It
it's
looks
happened to me.
completely different.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe 3 times that's happened to me. And
Yeah.
so as a business leader and the leadership team, you're handling problems. You're problem solvers. That's what you do all day.
Yep.
And it's fun. But when you're in the thicket solving problems, somebody's got to go up above the forest to look and see which direction
Yeah.
that we need to go to get to town.
Yep.
And so meeting every 90 days has been a cadence that works very well.
Yep.
And getting out of the business, getting everyone's mind out of those problems. Oh, how are we going to make
Yeah.
payroll? And, what about this customer that's mad at us? Just leave that behind
Yep.
and think big for a day and really plan and then execute on that plan and then do
Yep.
it again in 90 days and keep
Yep.
doing it. And that's what sustains success and continues growth.
Yeah, I really love that. Have you, I was thinking about it for like a personal check-ins too,
Yes.
like where you are as a leader or as a human, as a parent, whatever role you want to focus on. So 90 days, like if something, you've dipped a toe off your path, 90 days, you can still course correct.
Yes.
But yeah, what a powerful idea, Chris.
Yeah. And that's gold, what you said right there, taking it to the personal level. I have had a few leaders say, hey, can I use this personally? And
Yeah.
we actually have built a plan for that they can take home. And it's called the family PTO. And it's
Yep.
a way to organize your family, the goals, and maybe a goal is to take one of ours this year is to take a ski trip in December.
Yep. Yep.
So we're saving points
That's
for that.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Oh, so Chris, I have 2 final questions for you, and these
Okay.
are they work well together. This is the way we end all of our episodes of the Communicative Leader. So, we're looking for leadership or communication tip, advice, a challenge. So the first part is for our titled leaders out there, folks who are managers, directors, supervisors. And then the second part is that kind of tip, challenge, or advice for employees of all ranks across all levels.
Okay. So what I would say, my tip for leaders, make sure you're giving your team the things they need to be successful. And typically those things are direction. A lot of times we, as leaders, we know it. And sometimes we are going so fast and we're sometimes 1, 3, 6 months ahead that we don't know/remember that a lot of times people they're in the now, and really that's a great place to be.
Yeah.
So they're in the right now, and they can't read your mind. So you have to communicate with them on a regular basis because they go home and they have their kids to take care of, and homework and meals to cook, and then they go to sleep and they wake up and it's a new day. So they need regular direction and leadership from you. So in that is communicating with them where the company is going, what role they serve, and what the desired results are, what good looks like. So they know what to do. And I think a lot of times you see, like I was on a call this week, and a gentleman told me, he said, "Hey, I'm having problems with my sales manager. She's great, but she only takes action when I tell her something's off."
Oh.
And I said, "Okay, so have you given her the permission to take action without you telling her?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Wow, I don't think I have." And so it comes down to communication.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to overstep her boundary, and he never told her it was okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's for the leaders. And then for employees, I would say it would be great. You'd be a great employee if you were just as leaders need to be open and honest with the employees. Just be open and honest with the leaders. And open meaning if you see that someone is, not working out very well, and I don't mean just bashing people for the sake of bashing them.
Yeah.
Have some sort of data to say, hey, I think John is not a great fit, and here's why. He comes in an hour late. He never makes his numbers. Because those types of things will bring the team down, and then before you know it, you'll have a team full of Johns. No offense to any John out there using the name, because I don't know a John right now personally, so I'm not picking on anybody. But really just being open and honest and communicating with your leaders what you need. Like, for example, another client I work with, I overheard a salesperson come in and say, "Hey, these new leads that we're getting from this new lead provider aren't working. Bunch of bad numbers. They're not working." And I thought it was great that he shared that with the owner, because the owner's spending, $10,000 a month on these leads, and it's great. That's a great example of communicating, and I thought that was just amazing that he did that. So I would say communicate really both directions.
Yeah. Yes. I love that as a communication scholar, right?
Yeah.
I think so many things would be if we just spent a few more minutes thinking about our communication, about what we know, but what our other, our conversation partner should know, or what we could share with them, and vice versa. So many fewer issues and misunderstandings and missteps. So thank you for raising that up.
Yes, it would make life much easier for everybody, and throw the assumptions away, communicate.
Yes.
I think you're right.
Exactly. Well, Chris, thank you for sharing your expertise with us, all of your stories, this advice. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know our listeners will as well.
Thank you, Leah. I appreciate it.
All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on The Communicative Leader.